Welcome to the TURF New South Wales Mass Load Restraint Guidelines training. This training is provided by TURF New South Wales and NHBR. Hi, my name is Drew Thompson. I'm from Logistics and I'll be running through this training today. So this training has been sponsored by the Heavy Vehicle National Regulator through their Heavy Vehicle Safety Initiative. So TURF New South Wales applied for some funding to get this system and training developed. So with the help of TURF New South Wales and its members, that we've coordinated these systems development and then today's training session as well. So who is Logistics? So Logistics are a small consulting engineering firm. We specialize in load restraint systems. So we have certified this load restraint system that we're going to be going through today. We also do a bit of traffic management and vehicle rollover review, and also accident investigation from a forensic analysis for vehicle rollover. So load restraint guidelines. So what are these documents? So these documents provide a method of meeting the performance standards. So the minimum requirements of load restraint when you're out on the public road. These are certified to meet compliance by a chartered engineer. This covers off turf pallets, palletized turf products such as rolls and turfs and slabs. So these guidelines are broken up into 4 key sections. So the first one I've got is the key elements, covering some of the key information within the guideline. We then go through a packaging requirement, how the turf pallets are supposed to be packaged to ensure they meet the load restraint requirements. Loading configurations, how the pallets should be placed on the back of the truck, and then we go on to the tie down section, how they should be tied down, amount of straps required per mass. So this aligns with the way the truck would generally be loaded and restrained. So looking at the key elements in our tie down guideline, so pallets must be blocked forwards. If they're not blocked forwards, they must have another option in terms of to provide forwards blocking or forwards restraint. So these options include a crossover lashing set or the newly developed lashing holder tool. What this does, this removes that 0.8 G forward force within our performance standards, and we now only have to restrain for tie down through a 0.5 G. So when we're blocking forwards, it's always got to be to an engineered headboard and not a pipe gate. Straps used in the system must be 50mm webbing strap, fully tensioned with at least standard binders or under tray winches. Unblocked loads are not suitable for this load type. Looking at the packaging of our pallets, so especially with rolls, we want the pallets to be covered with at least 6 wraps of the turf mesh, covering the whole entire pallet. This helps unitize the stack as one unit and prevents that bottom layer from rolling. Should be applied with sufficient tension so it's nice and tight, and the packaging should be in good conditions without any tears or rips. Looking at our flats or slabs turf, we're using three brace. You want to make sure it's covered depending on the way the strap is arranged. Not fully blocked forwards. The turf pallets will need to be packaged as well. If the strap goes and contains a top layer of turf slabs, the packaging requirement will then not be required, as shown in the picture here at the right. So loading configuration, how should we be loading this on that goes per the guidelines? So you want to centrally load single file pallets. It's because you'll find the strap will push the pallet to one side as you go down the road. With our gaps to the headboard or to other blocked items, we want to leave no larger than a 200mm cumulative gap along the truck. So that means 200mm for the first gap, and then with all the gaps added together, it must not be above 200mm. If large gaps are there in the load due to things like axle mass requirements, you should be looking at applying something like a crossover to lashing holder in place. And when we're loading to abreast, we want to butt the pallets as tightly as possible together. When we're using crossover straps, we want to make, when you can't block forwards or something like a pipe going front, you want to use 2 webbing straps, being webbings with ratchet binders, not underslung winches. We want the angle to be no greater than 45 degrees. Plywood in front to help hold the load against the turf pallets. And we need one of these sets per 14 ton of pallet mass. And then we tie down after this. Looking at the lashing device, we want a continuous lashing that goes up in the front of the holder. The holder's got to be sufficient strength to withstand the forces that are going to be applied to us. You want them to cover at least 1.5 rolls of turf. You want an angle of maximum 90 degrees. We want a maximum of mass of 9 tons per lashing holder. Turf pallet behind it. And you only want to use inline ratchets like our crossover set. Moving on to the tie down, the individual tie down of the rows. The lashing must be restrained, retention prior to leaving tight. So this is critical, as with the turf, as you tighten down the strap, it will compress and then it will continue and let some tension off. So you need to retension that strap prior to leaving tight, because it will lose tension based on the turf and the way it shuffles and moves about while you're driving. And then it should be retensioned with 20 kilometers of the journey or appropriate intervals. One of the key things when tying down the turf pallet is, due to the amounts of compressibility of the turf, you may end up in a situation where as shown in the picture on the right here, where you get excessive wraps on the ratchet as you're tensioning up, which can then jam on the tongue of the ratchet and then cause it not to be able to tension any further. So you may not have reached full tension in the strap because it may have jammed as you're winding up. So if this happens, you should be let off the tension, pull the strap through, pull all the slack out, and then retension until you no longer get that grabbing on the spool, to ensure you got enough tie down tension applied to your pallet. So some of the systems we've gone through within the guideline is the standard webbing over the top, webbing with corner protectors, and also webbing with pallets on top. And this is due to the amount of pre-tension we can actually apply to the straps applied to the pallet due to their compressibility. So when we're looking at freshly cut turf, so we're talking about turf that's just been cut and thrown on the back of the truck, we've got 3 different tables for this scenario. And like our tie down tables, you got the number of lashings, what the lashing angle is, and how much each of those combinations will hold. So you can see as we go, we get, due to the lower tension achieved when we throw a strap over the top without things like corner protection of the pallet, that's going to have a lower capacity than some of the other systems. You see then once we go to webbing with corner protectors, we get slightly more tension per strap, and then even more when we go up to the pallets on top. We can get basically the full tension out of the strap. Due to the general nature of the turf being cut and left overnight on trucks and settling, so this reduces some of we found from testing that when we've done this method and retention, we actually achieve a higher pre-tension in our strap due to the settling. So this method here, we've outlined process in which should be done, and then we can rely on a higher tension in that strap. So we want to load the turf afternoon before the journey, fully tension the straps, let it settle overnight, and then retension in the morning prior to departure. And then again, once we've left the site, we want to retension as we go down the road as well. And you can see in this table here, we actually get a lot more capacity out of that system than the standard over the top without the settling. So the key to this system is it allows the load to settle prior to actually departure and then the final tension. It is critical for these systems to be retensioned. So as long as the numbers in this table are followed, you'll be covered by the certification in that load restraint guideline. So that's a tie-down restraint system. The details for that system can be found on the Turf New South Wales website. The other system we have is very similar in terms of restraint, but it's using a rated curtain to provide sideways restraint. So What's a rated curtain? So a rated curtain is a tall liner curtain that's been certified to someone to provide a load restraint capacity. It is generally outlined in either per pallet weight, per pallet width, you want to aim for minimum gaps between the load. So a single file pallet isn't going to be suitable for a rated curtain system. When you can't meet the rating or the gaps, we've got to then tie down the system. So what we want to do is to make sure where possible, we're blocking all the gaps, forwards, rearwards, and sideways. So therefore we can use that rating on the curtain to provide that sideways restraint. We want to make sure we have at least that 200 mil gap to the front at maximum, or we have to tie down that strut. We want to block to at least 3/4 of the pallet height, and to the rear we want to have no less than half a pallet space between the rear load and the door. If any gaps do exist and you can't satisfy the gaps within the load, then you must go back to the tie down restraint system. The rated curtains are purely for only providing a sideways restraint force and can't be used if gaps exist between the load. So the next set of guidelines that have been developed for the turf industry revolve around mass management. So by mass management, we're talking about where to place turf pallets on a semi-trailer or rigid vehicle and how that mass transfers through the truck to either the total GVM of the vehicle or the individual axle limits. So these systems have been developed for a single drive rigid, a heavy dual drive rigid, a dual drive and dual steer rigid, semi-trailer, and a B double setup, and with forklifts and without forklifts on the back. So in order to select the correct system to use, depending on your vehicle type or your situation, you've got this flow chart that outlines that process. So what you want to look at is the vehicle type. So do I have a single drive rigid, a dual drive heavy rigid, dual steer? Pick the vehicle based on the wheelbase. So there is different systems for different wheelbase trucks within the rigid scenarios. Does it have a rear or mounted forklift? Yes or no? What sort of pallet size is my truck? And then whether I'm doing a single drop load or a multi-drop load. So by that we mean, are you going to be taking part of the load off at the destination, at multiple destinations, or are you taking all off at one destination? Because that will affect how the systems work. On a multi-drop load, the system's been designed that you can pick or pull any pallet off that system and it will still be compliant for your axle limits. So the key thing we need to remember with these systems is we want to make sure we check the truck combination or the truck dimensions and tears and masses meet the systems outlined in the system. So you see here we have a wheelbase limit up to allowable tear masses for the drive and steer, and a distance between the headboard and the steer axle. So this is all used to be able to work out where we can place loads. And then down below that we also have how much we can actually place on that pallet row. So you can see in this picture down here, we had the first one empty, and then we've got up to 1.5 ton in pallet row 2, and then 2 ton through the rest of the truck. So this is set up this way so that we have we do not exceed the axle limits on either the front or rear drive of that system. So here's that pallet row made up. So if I'm saying up to 2 ton, what that means is I can either have 2 pallets up to 2 ton, so A or B together, or a single pallet at 2 ton. So that concludes the training session on the developed restraint systems. You can find these on the Turf New South Wales website. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact Turf New South Wales. Thank you.